You might have heard of old Japanese songs that sound something like. It's actually a whole genre called city pop that was really popular in Japan in the 80s with great nostalgic vibes that modern anime songs borrow a lot from too. And while the chords themselves are heavily inspired by American funk and soul, the way they use them is slightly different. So let me show you how these chords work by building on a typical city pop chord progression little by little, making it more and more complex with each section, and showing off a cool, unique anime chord at the end of the progression. Let's get into it. So first, let's start with the chord progression. So a common chord progression used on city pop is the 5-1-6-2 chord progression. So there are 30 keys in music, and each key has 7 notes. So the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, back to do notes. In the key of C, that would be the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C notes. Essentially, each key acts as a guideline, using a collection of correct notes to play that leads to a coherent sound overall. And each note within the key has a corresponding chord. So the 5-1-6-2 chord progression in C would be the G, C, A, and D chords like sounds kind of city pop already. So a trick happening here is that usually the 1-4-5 chords of a key would be major. So in the key of C, that would be the C, F, G chords, and the 2-3-6 chords would be minor. So in the key of C, that would be D minor, E minor, and then A minor. So major chords tend to give it a happier sound, while minor chords tend to give it a sadder sound. But here we actually make the Phi chord, the G chord, a minor chord. And that's what really gives this progression this melancholic sound commonly associated with Japanese music. If you're interested in learning about another chord progression commonly used on Japanese music today with this Phi minor chord, check out this video where I go over what's known as the Marusa chord progression used by popular Japanese artists like YOASOBI and anime like Jujutsu Kaisen. So here another trick is that we're using open chord shapes whenever possible. So except for the first chord, which we bar with our index finger, G minor, we're using the other open chord shapes. So C, A minor, D minor. So they tend to sound better for the style playing. Open chords just meaning that so we can play a chord many different ways. So for example, C major. But we choose to use chord shapes that allow us to use as many of these 6 open guitar string notes as possible for a cool sound. So for example, here with C, we choose to use this shape where we just press down with 3 of our fingers so we can let these 2 open strings ring out. Moving on, another common trick nostalgic Japanese songs do is to alter the chords within this progression and make them what's known as 7th chords, like sounds more city pop. So on K-pop, they also use a lot of 7th chords, but the main difference here is that we use mostly minor versus major chords. So 7th chords are really common chords used on jazz, and what they are really just regular major and minor chords, but with 1 note difference in each chord. So take this first chord as an example, G minor. We just lift our pinky to make it a G minor 7th chord. And next chord too, we got our C major chord. We just drop down our pinky for this C 7th chord. And then we got A minor. Again, just lift our ring finger for A minor 7. And then D minor chord. We just put our ring finger note down 2 frets to make it D minor 7. Again, just 1 note difference each time, but just makes it sound way more beautiful. Now let's take it to the next level by making these chords 9th chords like sounds sick. So 9th chords are pretty similar to 7th chords in that it's really just 1 note difference between 9th chords and regular major and minor chords. But it's just that 1 note we change is different. So we start with this G minor 9th chord. And it's really just the G minor chord we have from the very beginning. But we drop our pinky down to the very bottom string. There we have our G minor 9th chord. Then we got this C flat 9th chord. We talked about this chord on my K-pop chords video too, but it's essentially just the C7 chord we have from earlier. But we move this note on our index finger up one fret for the C flat 9 chord. Again, just 1 note difference. And then we let the open string ring out. Very cool sound. Afterwards, we got this really cool A minor 9 chord that I talk about in my K-pop chords video too. But essentially, we just complete all the shapes we had so far, and just put 2 fingers on the middle 2 strings of the guitar on the 5th fret, and let the other strings ring out, except for the string on the very top. Super cool. So we can use a shape like this, which is pretty much just this minor shape we had from earlier, with our index finger barred all the way through the 6 strings of the guitar, and then move our pinky up 2 frets. Again, with this shape, we can see that it's just 1 note difference between this A minor 9 chord and a regular A minor chord. Finally, we got this D sharp 9 chord. Again, complete ditching any shape we talked about so far. So we got 1 finger on the 5th fret, a 2nd string from top, another finger, 1 string, 1 fret down, another finger on the 5th fret, 1 string down, and then finally we lay our pinky down, the 6th fret, 1 string down. And we just let these 4 strings we're fretting ring out, not letting these 2 open strings ring out on top and bottom. So theoretically, we could have just done like our D minor shape from the very beginning, and then added an extra note, again, because 9th chord is just 1 note difference. But I thought this newly rearranged shape sounded cooler, even though it's just all the same notes. Finally, at the end of the progression, we're going to add this really unique and common chord used on popular anime and Japanese music of the last 10-20 years, like so this chord is what's known as the Blackadder chord, or the ikisugi chord, which in Japanese literally means like overdone or too much. So it's been used a lot exclusively in Japanese music in recent years on anime like. So essentially, it's often used as a transition chord to transition back to the first chord of a progression. So what happens on songs is that they would usually play the Blackadder chord equivalent of the first chord in the progression to make it a smooth transition. So for example, the first chord here is a G minor chord. So they will play a G Blackadder chord. And there are actually 2 other ways to play Blackadder chords too. So this is one of them, and we got this other one. And finally, we got this one that sounds the lowest, starting on the very top string of the guitar. I chose to use this Blackadder chord, which sounds higher, since I thought it acts as a nice contrast to the first chord, which is a G minor chord that sounds quite low. But here's how it sounds if we use this other lower Blackadder chord instead. Doesn't sound as good in my opinion. Not to mention this higher Blackadder chord shape is also physically closer on the guitar to the chord that comes right before it, D minor 9 chord. And this is a trick in jazz music where if you play chords that are physically closer together on an instrument, whether it's guitar or piano or whatever instrument, they tend to sound more beautiful when played back to back. By using a lot of minor chords with a 9th chord variation, Japanese songs are able to achieve this really cool nostalgic sound. If you're interested in learning about other Asian music styles with a nostalgic sound, check out this video where I go over how K-pop makes simple chords sound advanced, with 2 of the chords over there we already covered here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.